Hi, my name is Sue. So I want to start at the beginning, only briefly, don't worry, no life story here, to say that observation is the key to my formation as an artist. When I first dreamed up the One Chick show back in 2003, which I'll get into, I thought that my love of chickens had started when I lived in rural Central America in my 20s. I just adored the way the birds moved, clucking and strutting, and they totally cracked me up. But then as I was looking through childhood photos, I came upon this. It's the LA County Zoo, early 1960s. While the other kids are running around, having fun, making mischief, that's my brother there in the foreground. There's me just watching a chicken, observing. And it's just the same now, really. The majority of my time is just spent observing things. It's the key to creating artwork for me. It's observation is key. The second most important thing for me is education, and that can take all different forms. It can be, university, college, but also day-to-day stuff, living on the farm. So fast forward from that first picture about 16 years later to college at UC Santa Barbara. I was majoring in art, concentrating on ceramics. I took a couple semesters off doing archaeological field work in Mexico and Central America. And then when I came back, I set about creating a life-size ceramic chess set. And of course, my first chickens, the pawns. This was my senior thesis show. And this was a life-size chess set. You can see the person in the far upper center of the screen. It was a life-size ceramic chess set representing my interpretations of adulthood, which involved a lot of serious, angry, or lascivious postures and looks on the adult side, and more free-form, happy-go-lucky experiences on the childlike side. So this kind of wrapped up my coming of age of living in Central America and then coming back and telling about it visually. And it began my telling of stories, basically. And then there was more education. Another 10 years, I went to MATC in Madison, and I got a graphic design degree so that I could get a day job making artwork and graphic design and illustration. But I also took 3 courses with 2 very influential teachers. Chris Gargan taught me oils, John Ribble taught me design and pastels, and Larry Whalo taught me etching. And it was one semester with each of these teachers. Larry Whalo wasn't at MATC, he was in near Mount Horeb, but it was the same time frame. Anyway, when I had classes from each of these 3 amazing teachers and artists, I felt able to do my first solo show outside of school. And now we get to back to observation, but also surrounding yourself with your models. If you do this, you never have to stop working. So James found a farm. I was out of state at the time. I told him I needed to be able to have a place I could have chickens, a place where I could have a studio and make a mess. And Luis, our son, would have his own room. So he basically bought it for me. I said, do I have those 3 things? And he said, yep. So in 1998, we moved to this farm. And I'm just zooming in from space, just to show you kind of how isolated we are and the beautiful the strip farming that happens in that area. And we eventually built a coop and a pig. We got a pig hut, and my studio is there, and I had everything I needed. And James was right. When he first bought it over the phone, he said, you're going to have landscapes for the rest of your life. And he was right, for painting, that is, for the rest of my life. So I started. I started with pastels. But my first love was animals, and I got my first chicks. I read a book about how to raise chickens, and soon after we moved there, we got some. And the reason I wanted chickens is because I wanted to have my first solo show be called a One Chick Show, all about the lives and the different breeds of chickens. And I was ready after I started doing some paintings, and I needed to do some paintings, pastels, and etchings. Those are the 3 mediums I knew at the time to do, because I needed to have artwork started for this show when I started shopping the idea around. which of course no one wants to have in their gallery because, you know, chickens, nobody wants chickens. It doesn't make sense. But I kept making some key pieces knowing that eventually I would be able to have my one chick show. This is more artwork created for the proposal. This is a pastel on canvas of one of my Polish chickens. And that's the other thing. I wanted to show people all the different breeds and how different they are. And then more art was produced. And this is, again, for the proposal. You know, you need to have, they need to know that you know what you're doing. So I also wanted to teach about the life cycle of chickens. And this is a broiler on his last days before culling. So with a half a dozen pieces featuring chickens, I submitted my idea to the Central Library in Madison, Wisconsin, and they said yes. And the great thing about this was that it was scheduled for a year later. So I would have 1 year to create almost, I think I did about 30 pieces for the show. And the first thing I did was to measure the landing because I wanted to have just this huge chicken. As I called it, I wanted to have a big ass chicken on that first landing. I needed to knock people's socks off. And then the last thing, number 3, so besides observation, education, production is key. And so I started producing for this one chick show. Having a deadline 1 year out gave me a goal, which is key to getting work done. You can't not do it. You can't back out and say, oh, I don't have work. You have to have work. So 1 year gave me enough time to get the work done. And I had 30 pieces done by the opening of the show. So this is me working on that 30-foot, 20 by 30-foot mural for the landing of Big Tiny, one of my chickens, and that's little Dexter in the corner, my little Jack Rat watching. And there's the finished piece. And then on the landing. And it was so much fun to hear people's reactions. They just glance up the hall, glance up the stairway, and like little kids, and see this huge chicken. So it was just a great way to pull people in. It was my first experience with doing ginormous artwork to pull people in and get them to look at artwork. Meet the Flock was a way to educate the people about the different breeds of chickens. When I first started raising chickens, I had no idea they could be so diverse. So there's Liberace on the left, the Polish, and then one of the broilers on the right. And the different types of combs you can see here. This is one of the bigger oils, 40 by 30 of Maximus. You'll see later on, you'll see a woodcut of the same piece, the same model, I should say. And then Brutus in the wintertime, again, oil on canvas, 4 feet tall. And then merch, I did some merchandising for McMurray Hatchery, shirts and cups. This is another one, which also showed up later on in a woodcut years later when I learned how to do that. This is oil on canvas. I went to the Chicago Art Museum and looked at some of the old masters, and this was inspirational, hugely inspirational, in a series of Chicken by the Window series that I did. And you'll see in my notes on the right, the little notes about the lost shadow, where it goes from black to black, or the lost edge, where the light's coming from, how it looks like there's interior lighting as well as the outdoor light, and the big fancy frame around it. All this was instrumental in giving it this look of one of the old masters' pieces. And so this was the first piece, Portrait of a Polish, oil on panel, 8 by 10, and part of the series. These are all, the little rectangles are 8 by 10 with super fancy frames. So those, I think, were probably about 6 inches wide. You can see that I wanted them to almost dwarf the painting and make it look somewhat ridiculous. Tops and bottoms. You know, raising chickens, it's just, I mean, you could really just sit there and watch them all day, but these little chicks running around, it's hard to tell sometimes which is the tops and which are the bottoms. So I wanted to give some of that frenetic energy to this pastel. And this is the first piece that made it into Birds and Art in 2005, On the Run. It was super, super thrilling. I think this is my 4th year of trying, and I couldn't believe it when I got in. So these are some of my Sicilian buttercups, and this is the pastel. I really I don't do many pastels anymore, but I love the way you can get that motion in there really quickly with the medium. And my first possum, I wanted to show the realities of farm life in this one chick show. So this is part of it. And the one piece that, not surprisingly, didn't sell from the one chick show. But again, the reality of raising chickens for meat. These are the two of my broilers. I had a neighbor teach me how to butcher. So at the end of the one chick show, it sold out except for this lovely piece. And I'd earned enough to be able to buy more frames, pay off the framing debts, and buy canvases to do another show. And they said, please come back. So I did the Lives of Farm Dogs 1 year later. And again, that 1 year time to create all the artwork is wonderful. You can get everything done with that sort of a deadline. So again, observation, education, and production. If you never stop doing these three things, you never have to stop working. And you can keep making artwork and keep getting better. I think that's key. You know, I'm never trying to rehash what I've already done. I mean, sometimes it's all I can do to do a sketch before I do a final because I just don't want to have to redo stuff. And there's just so much to tell about life on the farm. So yeah, with these three things, you can do anything. And again, when I say education, I mean any sort of education, on the job, on the farm, whatever. But observation, those three things are key. And so it began production on the next show and continued with a solo show almost every year since then. This is the Lives of Farm Dogs, 2 of the 6-foot paintings that I did. Farm Breakfast. This was our neighbor Pat. So the Lives of Farm Dogs, I went around to all the different farms and took reference photos of working dogs. So my dogs are not maybe what you call working, although Dexter here was definitely doing a really good job watching that chicken. I did about 20 pieces for the Farm Dog show. And then the other wonderful thing that happened was I got, it was really a dream come true for me. I got represented by a premier gallery in the Midwest featuring artists from across the country. The owner had seen my work at the library, the One Chick Show and the Lives of Farm Dogs, and invited me to show at the gallery. At the time, it was Artisan Gallery in Paoli, and now it's Able Contemporary in Stoughton. Anyway, I've been showing there since then, and it's truly an honor to be represented by them. And you can see one of my big cutouts there in the lower or far left of that's an 8-foot goat. And then pigs, I got pigs. I had a neighbor who taught me how to raise them. So I figured, you know what? I live on a farm, I eat meat, I better learn how to do this myself. I mean, it just made sense. So I just do feeder to finish, which means you buy feeder pigs in the spring and then you slaughter them in the fall, or as we either have a mobile slaughter unit come to the farm or we take the pigs in, the hogs in to be slaughtered. I got a different breed every year and learned not to get too close to them emotionally and never to name them because, well, you know, they end up as meat at the end of the season. So there were Yorkshire crosses here. These are Hampshires, one of the heirloom breeds, and Berkshires. I needed this heirloom breed for Chicago Hog Butcher for the World that you'll see later on. That will come later. But as piglets, they're incredibly cute and just really smart creatures. So then the whole hog came to the library in 2007. Again, filling the landing. This one was slightly smaller. But that was a wonderful big old boar that from the farm where we actually got the pigs from. That was my model for this. And one of the things that happened on the farm, I had a disappearing chicken or two before I figured out where they were getting out. And this segues into what I learned next, how to do woodcuts. So grad school. The economy in 2007 was changing. People with disposable income was becoming less and less. And sales at Artisan Gallery at the time, they were slowing down a bit for me because I made these huge paintings. So I decided I wanted to learn how to do woodcuts. So I want to do relief printmaking, which is where you have a surface, it can be a linoleum block or a wood block, and you carve into it. and then you ink up the surface, put the piece of paper down on top of that, run it through the press, and you have a print. You pull the paper off and you have a print. So relief printmaking can be a number of things, but I primarily learned woodcut and lino cut, and that's what I do. So what this would do, going back to grad school, learning how to do this medium, it would enable me to show in multiple locations with multiples of the same image, which is the beauty of printmaking. And each one would be more affordable because you have, like, say, 20 of them. So instead of a few $100s for a big print, a really big print, versus a few $1,000s for a big oil painting, the prices, it doesn't compare. So it was making my artwork available to more people from all different walks of life and different income levels. And you can even print t-shirts and sell them for 20 bucks. So I love that you could do lots of price points and offer them to all different people. It didn't have to be wealthy art collectors only. You know, you could have your collectors, but then you could also have your friends and family and people who don't have as much money buy really fun stuff to brighten their home and just make them smile. I mean, that's really why I do a lot of what I do, is I want to make people think or smile or just have a good time or whatever. So anyway, these pull toys, these were, I printed them onto, these were wood blocks printed onto paper, hand colored, and then I adhered them to wooden cutouts and made pull toys out of them. And this actually got into Birds and Art, I think, in 2011. Much to the surprise of my husband, who couldn't believe I would have submitted these. So yeah, I never show him anything I'm submitting. But anyway, this is actually a good example of a print that didn't work. This is my first big wood block. It was 30 by 48. I way over carved it. So I'm not one to ever just toss a piece, like say this doesn't work. I went in there with my pastels and made it work as a pastel. So that for me is crucial. I'm not going to waste my time carving, in this case, carving something, not have it turn out and then just say, oh, well, it didn't work. It's like, I learned from this. You know, have a really good plan when you're going to do a woodcut, because if it doesn't turn out, you're kind of screwed. But in this case, I was able to go in there with pastel and make it work. So this is one of our dogs. We used to have, Sophie, who caught a raccoon in the act, basically, of killing one of my chickens. So the raccoons and possums and weasels or minks are predators of chickens in our area in southern Wisconsin. But, you know, if you close the coop up at night, raise the feeder so nobody's drawn to the feed, you know, you can usually go through quite a period of time without having any losses. But, you know, they watch to see when the door goes up and when they can get in. This is a artist book, letterpress on handmade paper, called Consequence, about a not so nice chicken. This is a book that was made from my artwork, and then stories were made to go along with the different pieces. And Turkey Promenade. This is a reduction woodcut, and I'm going to show you the different stages. This actually was in Birds and Art as well. This was, yeah. So first of all, I draw the design down. I usually cover it with something like Sharpie just to get the nice black lines. And then on the left there, after it's drawn down, you seal it with shellac, and that keeps the design on the block. So as you ink it up and print and do all and carve, that drawing never really goes away. It stays there. So then what I do is I ink it once the shellac is dry. The next day I inked it up with bright yellow, put the piece of put one piece of mulberry paper down, run it through the press, take the paper off, and do that 17 more times. So I have basically 18 pieces of mulberry paper that are just bright yellow. I knew I wanted to have the whole thing yellow and no white of the paper. The next color, so basically then I carve away everything I want to leave yellow. So you can see in that picture on the left, all the yellow spots, that's where it's carved. And then I inked it up bright pink, put the paper down, again, the yellow pieces of paper down one by one through the press, and it comes out to sort of a salmony red color because all these colors are mixed sort of transparently. So it's not a pure, bright, opaque pink. The third color was that bright green. You can see that on the left side picture, that little blob of ink there on the right side of the left-hand picture. Very bright, but again, with transparent base. Rolled up, so I carve away wherever I want to leave it. Red, which was very little. It was just pretty much in the wattle and comb area. You can see a little bit in the sky. Ink it up green, same thing with each piece of paper. And now I've got kind of this olive green color. Then bright purple, same thing with all of them. And then I really love that image, so I printed some t-shirts with it. Just again, it was just the purple on these different colored t-shirts. And then the last one was the black, and that's the final, that what is also called the key line. And you'll notice if you look closely in the upper left-hand corner, all those indentations. This was a really good lesson. Don't print t-shirts on a block that you're going to have to then go print, because I basically wrecked the block. So what I did is each print that came off of there, off the black one, I had to go in and hand rub in down into all the crevices to get the black to show up. So good lesson. And this is the final. Okay, so big prints. I've got a carcass there on the left that's I'm going to submit for a show in New York. And then my first big chicken wood block. These are 4x8 sheets of Baltic birch. All right. And then this is, I'm just telling people how you ink it up. So you can see on the block, the black on the chicken, there's a white outline. I didn't actually carve the entire block at this time because it was going to be a cutout. It was going to be, the chicken was going to, print was going to be cut out and adhered to a cutout shape. So I could basically be lazy and just do the chicken and cut it out and then deal with the whole block later at a different date. So these are the carcasses hanging in New York City. This was huge for me. Yeah, no, whenever I would submit like animals and things like that, no, but carcasses, yeah. So this was fun. These were printed on paper, cut out, adhered to, you know, that styrofoam that you use for house insulation, those big pink sheets. I cut those out with a jigsaw, painted them kind of fatty white, you know, off-white creamy color, and then adhered the prints to those. And then I actually made up some kind of meat hook looking things hanging from wires and had them go through that. So that's basically all of a print except for the hooks that are coming down through the print at the top. And this is the first big 8-foot woodcut finished. And this was at the Overture. The reason I did something so big was I was finding that you can't really get people to get into shows unless you do something really huge and colorful and coming off the wall. It really attracts people's attention. So this chicken it was cut out, it was hand colored, adhered to plywood form that I cut out with a jigsaw, and then varnished a whole bunch. And you could see it from the street, and people would come in, and then as I always like to think, you suck them in, and then they're like, oh my gosh, look at all this artwork, and then they have to go look at your whole art show. But anyway, this is before I had a big press, so when I put the paper on top of the inked block of this chicken, this 8-foot chicken, I had to transfer it all with a wooden spoon. So you basically turn on some really good music or a book on tape, and you just start rubbing your wooden spoon all over the back of the print to have it transfer. It's really boring. And this is part of the show. And this is a reduction again. You can see there's about 5 colors there. And this is showcasing how I like to tell stories and little fun things that happen on the farm. The print says, the handbook said, introduce the chicks to household pets to let them know the chicks are yours and shouldn't be touched. Like I said, I learned to raise chickens from a book, and this is what they said. So I was holding this in front of Dexter, and he was vibrating. You know, he's a little terrier. And the next moment, he put the entire chicken in his mouth, and then quick took it off because I was yelling and went and hovered in the, you know, like shaking in the corner. And I realized that I had been teaching him to point. I had no idea what I was doing. But anyway, we learned from this. We learned. And he never ate chicks, but he really, really wanted to. This was a really fun installation. This was a life-size tunnel book that I did in The Tunnel of Mortality. It was done in the cooler. This was the old gallery back when Able Contemporary wasn't in Paoli. And it was this long, originally it was a cooler for cheese. And anyway, it was all wallpapered, fabric wallpaper printed. And this is just taking you through. And that big framed piece is actually a space that looks back into this giant life-size tunnel book. And the comments were really wonderful. People would say things from like, I'm really hungry for pork sandwiches to I'm never eating meat again. So it was just a really fun experience. This show at the Milwaukee Art Museum was pretty life-changing for me, because there were these huge 8-foot prints. Now, these were lithographs, not woodcuts, which is a completely different process. But these 8-foot Muka posters prints were just breathtaking to me, that you could do something that big and be that striking. And that's advertising. So it was combining my love of design and advertising and huge, beautiful color. The circus prints I loved. And then these were 3 small prints that I made after seeing this show, all dealing with life on the farm and or imagined life on the farm, with models from our farm or other farms. And this is the first chicken pot pie I did. This was for a steamroller event. So it was 30 by 60 inches. It had to be a specific size. And this is, I'm carving Baltic birch. It's just a sheet of Baltic birch from Home Depot or some hardware store. And then here we are cutting the paper for it at the steamroller printing event. This was at UW at Manitowoc. And I'm getting ready to ink it here. Lots of inking. And then we're getting it all registered in the inside of the wooden frame and putting the paper down and covering with blankets. And then here goes the steamroller. So this printed really well on fabric, but I still had to print by hand with a wooden spoon for the paper ones.
No, we can just pick it up the other corner. Hold it up for just a second.
It's too bad the pencils. Dallas. I am hungry. I understand that.
And here's printing the wallpaper. This is paper wallpaper, but then I also did fabric wallpaper for another show at the Overture Center. And here's my little models showing how big the wallpaper is. And then this is a show with my dear friend Alicia, who is an amazing artist. And we did the big cutout forms in the foreground because you could see it from the street. This is at the Overture Center on State Street in Madison. And if you looked in, you could see this giant goat on the left and this giant horse on the right. And it really drew people in to come see this show. These are both oils on wood. And then I got an invitation. Actually, I've heard about this 60 by 40 woodcut challenge. I'd never done one that big. And well, I had done the 8-foot chicken, but this was one where they were going to print an edition of them onto canvas. And it was a whole show of them with a bunch of amazing artists. So I wrote the organizers and asked if I could be a part of this. And I got an invitation to the 60 by 40 woodcut challenge, and it eventually led to many more larger than life woodcuts and more opportunities. Hoof Print Workshop used to be situated in this funeral home, which coincidentally was right near the neighborhood where the Union Stockyards were when they were in existence. And they were in existence from 1865 to 1971. And, you know, when I got the invitation, I was like, I got to do something in Chicago. I want to use my hogs. weren't there some stockyards? And I looked it up, and sure enough, it was just amazing. And the research for this was so much fun. You can see in this picture in the way upper right armor, that's and in the yeah, oh, it was just so much fun looking at all these old black and whites. And then I have my Berkshire hogs that year, and I knew they were the right hog to use because they're an heirloom breed. And of course, back in the day, they would raise them really fat. The genetics were slightly different, and they would also take them in when they were a lot bigger. So I took tons of reference photos trying to figure out the perfect angle to make the hog look like a giant. I also had to get them a little bit past market weight, so they were over 300 pounds when we took them in. And the old time were slower growing fatty hogs from back in the day. Anyway, Berkshires are one of the heirloom breeds. It's why I used them. They are fatter than the crossbred leaner pigs of modern pig farming. And I figured it would be the perfect hog to be depicted for this piece, harking back to the day of the Union stockyards. This was a little sketch. You remember how I told you I hate doing things twice? So this was my little, I think it was about 3 inches tall, maybe 4 inches. And it was like, yep, that's it. It'll be awesome. And then I know you don't think so looking at this, but I could feel it was going to be really fun. Those 2 circles underneath the Chicago theater sign, I was going to have little scenes, just like in the circus posters that I showed before. And then, so I did it the same as the other ones I showed you, where I draw on it with charcoal, then I go over that with Sharpie, and then I coat the entire block with a red sort of, I usually use acrylic, just very thinly, so that when I do start carving, you can see where you carve. Otherwise, you're just carving wood color into wood color, and you can't really clearly see how your carving is going. And again, this is Baltic birch, which is slightly better grade than regular birch plywood. There's less voids in it. So if you have voids in a print and you were to run it through a press, you're going to have big areas of really light ink, because those voids actually, you can't get good pressure through the press. So anyway, and here it is finished. And that on the left is just a close-up of the carving. And then we printed them all. And that was on to canvas. They printed them at Hoof Print Workshop, where they had a big enough press to print all these 60 by 40 prints. And there is the show with all the other ones next to it. Oh, I wanted to say it was so much fun. Talking with some of the other artists, there was a couple guys there one whose uncle and one whose dad had worked in the stockyards in the late 60s and late 60s. And he talked about the smell of living next to the stockyards and how it was pretty overpowering, and how his uncle would come home and he had these huge hooked gloves that he used when they were processing hogs. It was just really fascinating, kind of full circle moment to talk with these guys about life back then. And another show where they showed all the 40 by 60s together. And then I entered into the biennial and got in and was awarded Best of Show. So to me, this was just, I could not believe it. I was just over the moon. I was so happy and thrilled. And then when you win the biennial, when you get Best of Show, they award you with a solo show at the Museum of Wisconsin Art, which again I never would have imagined in a million years I would get that. So just one thing after the other for me this year was just, it was really amazing. And I kept thinking, this was this project that I wasn't even going to do, this woodcut challenge. So that little yes turned into a whole bunch of bigger things. And then that same year, we got puppies. Omar the Dane in the middle and right, and Ivan the Pyr. So Omar is a Great Dane. He's a Harlequin Great Dane. That's that coloring. And Ivan is a Great Pyrenees. And the sweetest little guy ever. Anyway, we thought they'd be great. They'd entertain themselves. They're 2 weeks apart in age. And then we proceeded, my husband James and I proceeded to get almost nothing done for the next year or so. There were 2 weeks apart in age. And yeah, no. What happened was Omar was just too rough. And he would just, it was like World WWF. I don't know if that's the same. It was like the World Wrestling Federation, but he would just slam into poor little Ivan. And Ivan was quite a bit smaller at that age, so we had to separate them and constant supervision. You can see here they're being watched while they play. So we mostly just tried to keep, Omar was my dog, Ivan was James's dog. I basically spent the next year just trying to keep Omar from killing Ivan or from killing himself. He ate and he still does eat everything. So these are some pieces I was able to do. This is called Omar Learns About Personal Space, where my little Zuzu, she's a Jack Rat, half Jack Russell, half Rat Terrier. And Omar, Great Danes do not observe personal space. Little Rat Terriers absolutely must have it. So this was right after Zuzu had just slammed into Omar, and his little face was just like, what is this happening? I don't think he'd ever felt pain or fright or fear or any of that. And suddenly this little ball of teeth and total disgust and anger was hurling herself at him. So anyway, he learned that day, but the next day it was back to the drawing board. But Zuzu did her best. She really did a good job training him. Dashing through the snow. He was constantly running around. He still does. This is Omar the Dane versus Ivan the Peer, again under supervised play. I think by the time they were almost 2 or 1.5, they finally just busted out and started playing together, and we realized that Ivan wasn't going to get killed anymore, and we let him go for it. So anyway, hand-colored lino cut, again, sibling revelry. So this is Omar watching me carve his block, which is called Game On, which you'll see in a moment. I have this here because he was constantly chewing on my block, so I had to carve the design so there wouldn't be anything on the corner. On the other ones, it's all chewed up. I just wasn't looking for a second, and he's like, "Oh, Mom, sorry, yeah, I was just chewing on that." So anyway, I had to design things without upper corners for a while, so I could not be having a nervous breakdown every time I was carving a big block with Omar in the studio. And this is the final one in the center, the block on the left being carved. Game On. It's what I said to myself every morning when I woke up. Once I got Omar, soon after, he was only a few months old, and this is actually from when he was about 3 months old. Every morning I'd wake up and I'd say, "Game on, Omar, game on. Like, what are you going to throw at me today?" It was constant vigilant watching of him. You'd have to close him in a room while you did your work to keep him from getting into trouble. He went on jogs twice a day at least, plus a 2-acre yard to run around in. Anyway, high energy boy, definitely. This is Chicken Pot Pie in Birds of Art 2016. One of the absolute joys of showing in this, besides the amazing museum and the honor of it, was this high school friend showed up over 30 years later to say hi to me, and it was just an absolute thrill to see her after so much time. At the opening, this is one of the opening weekends. And this is I wanted to show you how show card press. This is a letter press, a type of letter press, and how it works. Oops, volume. So anyway, those are plastic plates that I draw and then have them sent away at Boxcar Press, and they create those different plastic pieces that I can then print on the letterpress. And this is inking up the next piece called Prehistoric Adolescence. This is a 24 by 48 and 24 by 48 inch block, and that is my etching press there that I'm inking on top of, and that's 30 by 48. So this was the biggest press I had at the time, and I was able to print a block the entire size of that press bed of the 30 by 48. But anyway, it's always a little bit tricky when it goes to the edges for this one. And this was at Birds of Art in 2017 with two of my idols. That's Andrea Rich on the left talking with a visitor, and that's her piece, unfortunately covered up on the left of mine. But anyway, she is a wildlife artist. I can't remember what year, but I came and watched her speak and watched her carve, and it was life-changing for me. I knew I wanted to do that way back then. And then this was the year that Don Rambet, he was the master wildlife artist, and that's some of his sculpture on the right. It was, yeah, every year it's just a huge honor to be in this show when I do get in. And this one I'm showing, I really had fun doing this guy. This was during the summertime. This garden spider made a web right over my tomatoes. So as I'm picking tomatoes, she's spinning away, and she's actually wrapping up her prey. And some of my friends who don't like spiders were really grossed out. So I did this picture of what I call smushing the spider. I'm actually printing it, but it looks like I'm going to kill it right now in the roller on the right. This is from the series The Many Faces of Omar the Dane. There's both reduction and hand-colored woodcuts. It's kind of a mix. And this was the solo show that I talked about at Museum of Wisconsin Art in 2018. And it's wonderful that one of the galleries is on that outer wall facing out to the street. So in the wintertime, when the show was, it would get dark really early, the lights would go on, and it was this amazing, beautiful show of all my big woodcuts visible from the street below. These are just some of the close-ups of the show. That was an 8-foot pig. Let's see. Did I show? Yeah. So this is the block, the 4 by 8 foot sheet of Baltic birch that the pig was printed from. And that's the print. Again, it was printed on paper. I colored the paper first, printed it, adhered it to this jigsaw cutout plywood form, and varnished it. And when you put something on cleats like that and have it stand out from the wall, it just adds more of a 3-dimensional interactivity to it. It makes people stop and touch it. And, you know, they're not supposed to, but yeah, it just gives it a more interactive feel to it. Oh, and this was totally not a professional career track here, but Bucky on Parade came to Madison, and I grew up just absolutely idolizing Bucky Badger. My brother told me that Bucky was the guy on the top of the Capitol, and I believed him for way too many years that was true. Anyway, I absolutely loved Bucky. When Bucky on Parade came to Madison, I submitted 2 designs. I was awarded 2 statues and got to paint them. It was a dream come true. And then at the party, I got to be with Bucky, and I got to do the W with him. So yeah, it was dream come true all over the place. It was an amazing year. Howdy, meet Howdy. This was a new 60 by 40 woodcut challenge from Hoofprint Chicago. The theme of the show is Prints of Unusual Size, or POUSs, after Princess Bride. It's ROUSs. And actually, we're kind of running late on time. I won't read this. It was basically this Cornish, well, I'll read it. As a chick, Howdy had dreams of flying, not understanding the limitations of the breed. He almost died at a few weeks of age, was saved by antibiotics, and thus every morning ran to his keeper, brightly greeting her with what seemed like a howdy, while the others ran to the food. Every morning. Before dawn on the 55th day of life, all the chickens were loaded up into the truck. Howdy ran up to be cuddled. Smart bird. He actually sat on my foot to be cuddled. Howdy the broiler, the jumbo Cornish cross chicken, now over 20 pounds, waddles on against all odds into his 3rd year of life. So yeah, I'm never doing that again, but yeah, what can you do? You can't. I actually went on Facebook and I said, you guys, what do I do? And they said, you can't take him in. Yeah. Anyway, there he is in his glory. He was huge. It actually was really hard to pick him up. I had to bathe him because he couldn't keep himself clean. But yeah, he was an amazing chicken. And then in 2018, went to an auction. A friend said, hey, there's this printmaking stuff at this auction. I went there I got my tape measure on and I was like, oh my gosh, you could print a whole 4x8 sheet of plywood there. And the woman came up, are you interested? And I'm like, nope, I don't have that kind of money, no way. Stop convincing me. And basically, bottom line is they handed me a deal I couldn't say no to. It came with rollers, it came with all this equipment, and this huge over 1-ton press, at least. It was an estate sale of Wayne Taylor, who was professor emeritus at UW-Madison. And when they sold it to me, because I couldn't get over it, they said, Wayne would be so thrilled to know that an actual printmaker bought this press and is going to be using it. Because they were going to sell it for scrap. Nobody wanted to buy it. So this is a Meeker McAfee etching press. And this is the travel. James, he built a ramp. It took him a week. They had to take out the sliding glass door to get it through the house where this was. He built a ramp, a wooden ramp, to go all the way around the building, up onto the flatbed, winching it up, and then back to the farm. And then this is our first print at Hoof Print Chicago. They came up and they helped me calibrate the press and get it ready. I spent like at least a month cleaning it up beforehand. It was really a lot of work because the roller, you can't wreck it. It's all rusty, but you have to very carefully take off all the rust. And then this is the video that they did that really fast. Yeah, this was life-changing, getting this press. I wasn't even sure I was going to keep doing big prints because it was so much work, but when I got this press, it was like, yep, I guess I'm doing more big prints, and it's been just amazing. And there it is. I wish it was this fast. And here's another video. So this is, you can read it. So I just want to tell you that this being able to print a 4x8 foot wood block by myself is a huge, huge hurdle. Like once I can do this, it's like, oh my gosh, I can do anything now. Being able to, and Gabe and Liz from Hoofprint, they showed me how to do it on my own. So yeah, so now I'm doing it. And I'm not going to show you the entire, I definitely speed it up, so you're not watching me ink this up because it takes me at least an hour to get the whole thing inked up. But I just wanted to show you the process because even though I do have a press and it's tons and tons easier now that I don't have to do it with that I don't have to print it with a wooden spoon, it's still just a ton of work. But I love it. It's physical. I think right now I'm kind of rocking out to a song. So if you see me kind of dancing idiotically, yeah. It just helps you get through it. And now we speed it up. So it's probably an hour start to finish after you've set up, gotten the ink right, And then, so you basically roll it up until you can't see any lap marks, like you can't see any roller marks. It should all be super shiny and glistening. You can see when I walk past it that you can see my reflection that's super, super shiny. Yeah. So now I just have to press it to be sure it's up against the press. There's little Zuzu saying, can we please go to bed yet? It's the middle of the night, no doubt. Because, it's really nice you're never going to get interrupted if you work in the middle of the night. And with stuff like this, you really can't stop. I think I just told her to go back to bed and she's like, oh, fine. So this is a motorized press. You have to hold on to the paper over the drum so it will be a smooth print. And then my left hand is reaching down to a lever that I'm actually flipping. And then you can see it slowly, slowly going through. And at one point, I take my hand off of it and use my knee, and I'm still using the lever. You can see it right here because I have to keep the paper from rolling up over. Which, it's not a good safety thing, but I know what I'm doing. Yeah, that's the only thing you have to be really careful with these big motorized presses, even small motorized ones, is if you were to get your hand stuck under there, it would be crushed instantly. I forget the math, but the amount of pressure, but it's way more than any steamroller or anything like that. And then I do, when I'm totally finished, I do reach down and unplug it because you just always want to have it unplugged if you're not printing with it. And Zuzu is still, yeah, her timing is always impeccable, exactly when I didn't need a little dog under my feet. So right now I'm just trying to get the block all the way through the press. I have to kind of pull it out. And then also at this point, I think this is the first time I did this. So I was like, I'm not really sure how I'm going to get it off the press, but we'll see. Because if you think about it, it's 8 feet tall. So even if you held it from the corners, and I'm pretty tall, I'm about 5'8" now, you can't keep it off the ground. So I'm literally trying to figure out which way to go and how to get it off the press without smearing and without like covering myself in ink. And I think I just said, well, screw it, let's just go, and flipped it over my back. So anyway, after this first one, it's a little bit easier. I can peel it back over the other side with that big white thing that you saw me taking out, and I can pretty much get it up onto the wall then cleanly. So this was an edition of 10, and I think I only printed a few because it's not a big seller, as you can probably imagine. Most people don't have an 8-foot plus wall to put a huge chicken on. You'll notice on the far right, there's a chicken with a black background. That was the original woodcut that I used for the cutouts, but then I had to carve the whole background when I did these full 8-foot prints. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay, so this is the next big show at the James Watches Gallery. I've been trying to get in there for years, and I was awarded a solo show there. So it was a huge thrill, again, to be in this one. And this is when I, for the first time, with my new Meeker McAfee etching press that summer and fall, I printed the whole editions of all of these big prints for the first time ever, and it was so wonderful. That press is just amazing. I get pure blacks with all the prints, and then hand coloring. So it was a ton of work, but so satisfying to actually be able to print them myself for the first time. And then switching over to very much smaller ones in 2020, I did a bunch of small oils for a side-by-side show with John Ribble at Able Contemporary. So these were some chickens that I bought in summer of 2020, little chicks, and then made paintings from them. And some more oils. And a 5-foot oil, still in progress. This is the underpainting. And this is Gur Kitty. This is a shirt that I made. And this is the front. So there's two different blocks used, one for the back, and then I use the same outer part, and then a different little lino cut black for the kitty. And this is an actual kitten that I went to, a friend was processing a deer, and I asked if I could come take pictures because I needed to do a print of a deer hanging. It was actually a piece I needed to do for a project. And then there was this little runt kitten, and she was standing next in this pool of blood, of deer blood, drinking the blood. And it was just this amazing juxtaposition of utter cuteness, utter ferocity. She was growling at me in this tiny little high-pitched voice. She was slapping her paw back and forth over her little piece of meat so that I wouldn't take it. It was like survivalist Hello Kitty or something, with her huge head and her little tiny voice and her ferocity. It was just really fun. So I have friends who call this anything from murder kitty to kitty to, yeah. It's a lot of fun. People have gotten into it. And then doing it on a bright pink shirt makes it all the more kind of outrageous and cute and all the things. And here's the possum. So this was in Birds and Art this year. This was such a thrill to get this guy in. I show it here in both black and white and the hand-colored version. This is a 48 by 48 woodcut. I think it's a little clear. Here we go, a little clearer. You can see in the black and white that it almost looks like a rat. When I was carving it, people would say, "Oh, dude, cool rat." And I'm like, well, yeah, not really. So when I was doing it, I was thinking, yeah, you're going to need to hand color this to make it show up what it is, because possums have those black or dark gray ears and the gray arms and kind of legs, and then the pink fingers and the bright pink nose. So sometimes hand coloring I do because I need to get the message across on what the heck it is, right? And then also the chicken with those feathers, the beautiful bluish greenish iridescent feathers. So, and then this was so much fun when I came to Birds and Art last year, and they were showing me where it was. And I was like, okay, yeah, sometime soon, guys. And I'm walking around the corner, and I swear I startled myself. And it's like, come on, dude, you made this. This is yours. What are you being scared at? But I just love what the museum did, how they hid the possum and then surprised people when they walked around the corner, because it totally worked. It totally freaked me out. So yay, museum. I also just want to tell you guys that, you know, this isn't about me hating possums or anything. I think they're absolutely amazing critters. I just, like, with all of the stories and scenes that I show from the farm, I just want to show that things aren't black and white, they're gray. I mean, this little guy was terrified that I was going to kill him, and you know, he was just doing his defensive pose where they open their mouth really wide and they drool profusely because he's terrified and he's defending his prey. So, and he's hungry. You know, everybody loves chicken. You can't hardly blame him. So what I try to do on the farm, like I said before, is I try not to unintentionally bait. I lift all the feeders up. I close the coop before dark. You know, sometimes things happen though. But anyway, I think possums are amazing. I just don't want them eating my chickens or, you know, eating all the chicken feed. And then I just have this here to show, this is the last in the edition of Chicken Pot Pie that was sold just this month at Able Contemporary. So it's the end of the edition, and I just wanted to share because it was such a big part of being in Birds and Art, and one of my first hand-colored big prints that I did on my new press. So anyway, thank you. That's it. Okay.
Okay. Sue, that was incredible. I knew that I was a big fan of your work, and now I'm pretty sure I'm obsessed. And thank you so much. You did an excellent job, and I will applaud you because you can't hear the applause of all the other. So, I think we are going to go ahead and turn it over to some Q&A. And what we can do is I will go ahead and ask you a few questions that folks submitted in the chat before we got started. And I think you basically addressed this first one already, which was making this big jump in the scale of your prints, which seems like the press was a huge part of that. But if there's anything else you wanted to chime in about making that leap in your work, go for it.
So I think I always knew I wanted to work big because, like I said, it's the only way to get people's attention, especially when with people on their phones, you know, you're constantly like this, right? So if you make something big and bright that's popping off the wall, like people are literally going to stop in their tracks and look, and it really does suck them in, because even I'm spoiled. Like if there's an art show that I really want to see, yes, I'm going to go to it. But if I'm walking down a hallway and there's a bunch of artwork on the wall and I'm in a hurry, I might not look at it that carefully. But if there's this big ass goat or chicken or something right there, it's like, what? And then you got them. And then they're gonna, oh look, there's more. So it's just a ploy. It's an absolute ploy. And then also that whole tough, like, can I do it? Yeah, you betcha you can do it, because yeah. And there's that also that physical. I love being physical and working out, and when you can actually get a workout from your artwork, it's just really rewarding too. But I don't know, and I have to moderate it because, you know, most people don't have that sort of wall space, and I have to make money at the artwork. So, you know, I do the big ones when I need them for a big show or something, or if I've got a great idea that, you know, it just won't work smaller. Like that 8-foot chicken, I was going to do it 6 feet because that gets in a lot of shows, but it's like, no, I have to have him looking down on everybody. So there's usually a reason I do something that big. Definitely. It's always, what am I trying to say? Oh, the possum. It needed to be big. I needed you to feel like you could actually get stuck in his mouth. Like you could go right into his mouth. I wanted the mouth to be right in the center of the piece. So again, it was an audience interaction thing, because I do things for people to come see. I don't do it for my enjoyment. I do it because I'm going to eventually be showing it. So
awesome. Well, I can say, having shared the Birds and Art exhibition with many visiting students and groups and visitors, the effect really was successful. Your intent there with the Possum people it was definitely had a menacing presence and scared a lot of people. So it was really great. It was really, and we always say that was the mark of how successful the work was, because it elicited such an immediate reaction. So hats off to you. We have another question from before we got started, and that was, I love the boldness of your work. It's as though the animals are saying, attention, I'm a goose, or I dare you to lock eyes with me, the possum. How did your work evolve to this exciting level?
I think I'm just trying to, the whole reason I do art is to tell a story or to show somebody something that I know that they're not seeing right now. Like most people don't have 40 chickens in their backyard, or these different breeds, or know what it's like to have a possum in front of you and you have to decide what to do. So I'm trying to recreate a scene that they can experience. It's not like I never think like, oh, I'm going to do a cute little portrait. Like, I want you to be there. I want you to be in that scene. I want to suck you into that scene and not let you look away. So it's oftentimes the reference photos, I do them from either below, slightly below the person, or not the person, the animal, or straight on, but hardly ever down, because that's what everybody sees. That's what looks like the possum that was on my trash can last night, you know, or that you see waddling away around the corner of your building. Like, wait, was that a possum? Like, I'm not trying to capture that. I want you to feel like you're right there with it. So it's my intent from the very beginning to do that. And I take tons of reference photos. I often, like, there's a scene and I'll take a ton of reference photos and I'll be like, oh my God, I got it. It's a perfect photo. And then I'll look and it's like, it's none of these. Where is it? And then I realize, oh my God, it's like all of the photos together is the scene. So then I do the little sketch, the right angle and all that, and then start looking at each of the photo for the detail that I need for the different parts.
Amazing. So again, I feel like I've planted some of your responses, because one of the things we always talk about in Birds and Art is how fortunate we are that the artists are affording us views and experiences and encounters that we don't have the privilege of seeing for ourselves. And so your work definitely does that for many of us. And the next question is, can you tell us about your color choices for layering and transparency and the opacity aspects?
So with reduction, you have to do, well, I often do them fairly transparent unless I've got a color I've got to go from orange to blue or something like that. That's going to just make brown, and I really want a bright blue. Then I'll do it more opaquely. But with reduction printing, when it's color over color over color, I was taught to always do it transparently. So you never really know what you're going to get because you do all the prints and then you can't like, oh shoot, that should have been a little bit different. Sometimes you can go and try to do it over, but anyway. And then with the hand coloring, I use P.H. Martin's transparent water-based inks, and those are just, I want these to be jewel-like. I want the colors to be really vibrant. Yeah, so if it's a big print that I know is not going to sell a lot, like there's no reason to make an edition of 20 reduction prints of that because you're just going to kill yourself and you're going to be sick of the print by the end, and then all that work, right? Whereas if you know that you want to show 3 for sure, you could hand color 3, and it's going to be one print run, through the press with black, and then you just hand color it.
Awesome. So additional questions. Do you cover your woodcuts with glass or plexiglass?
Absolutely, yeah. You mean the finished prints? Yeah, yeah. I was taught to do that. The only thing I don't cover really are the oils, pretty much. Yeah. I think with the cutouts, then those are varnished with polyurethane. So yeah.
And then just lots of praise here on your talk. And then wondering, Allie loves your letter work, and did you take typography as well?
So at METC, I learned graphic design and typography, in fact, from John Ribble, who is an amazing typographer. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so I learned there. And I just took a history of letter course this summer because I feel like when I do lettering, I'm just copying stuff. And I felt like I really need to more find out about the history of all the different letter forms and make it kind of more integral and not so much just copy pasting what I see. So we'll see how that works. Because I think the big pieces that are the most successful are when you're teaching something. So like the Chicago Hog, you've got all that typography in there. And again, I'm just copying it from the Chicago theater sign and stuff like that. But I feel like if I had more of an understanding of the history of the type forms, it might be even better. Because, in my day job, I'm a graphic designer and illustrator at UW. And so I work with type all the time.
And a question from Linda, what is your next big thing, pun intended?
Well, I've got a huge list. So I basically have to figure out, actually, Lucy McAhern, is that how you pronounce her last name, from Birds and Art?
Oh, Lucy
Sculptor.
Yeah, sculptor.
She's the one who told me, I always think about if I were going to die after this next print, what do I want to do the most? And I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant, right? That's brilliant. So I have to take my huge list and say, okay, if you're going to die, I only got one left. Better pick. So yeah.
That'll help you prioritize. It's a little morose, but I'm sure it works.
Yeah. It works. Yeah. Because I mean, the list that I make and then I make new lists, you're never going to get those done. Like literally, I will never get them done. So you got to figure out what are the stories you want to tell the most. Yeah.
So question from Alethea. It was great to see your artist journey. I have to ask who purchased your landing paintings. Are they hanging in someone's living room?
So the Big Tiny, the Return of Big Tiny, that one is in Epic Systems in Verona, and cool. It's in their training center. And oh my God, it was so cool. They set it back. It looks like they built the space for it because it's set back in this wall, and then they actually hung burgundy curtains in front of it. So it's like curtains in front of curtains. Like, oh my God.
It.
I went and saw it. It's like, who did that? Like, it was another piece entirely. And then the whole hog one, that was purchased by the mother of the daughter that was in the little scene. There was this little 4-H girl holding up her ribbons in the back of the truck of the big whole hog on the flatbed. And so the mom actually bought it for the daughter's wedding when she grew up. So
That's
yeah.
incredible.
Yeah,
Oh, full
sweet.
circle.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing.
Sweet.
I'm wondering if anyone has any other questions, to please feel free to enter them in the chat now. I don't know. I'm wondering how you have energy and stamina to do all the things that you do, and at the scale that you do. It's very impressive. So actually wondering what you do for yourself as a maker, as an artist, as a person, to relax and try and unwind after a late night session in the studio, or what do you do?
Well, I definitely have to jog every day, and Omar is really great with that. So we actually jog twice in the morning and then in the evening. And then it's hard because I have a day job. So I mean, it's part-time, it's 3/4 time, but it's a challenge, definitely. But having a show like I'm gonna do this for this date, that really helps setting dates. But I think really just the jogging out in the fresh air every day is just life-saving. Definitely. And then, living on the farm, even though it's just chickens, there's still quite a bit of
labor and exercise.
My husband and I, we went on vacation like years ago, and we're like, oh my God, that was just like a week. We're getting fat, like just with 1 week, because you're just not walking every day. I mean, you walk from your house to the building, to the studio, to the chickens, everything. And my farming neighbors, they're like, yeah, it's awesome. You always are running around. So
Good.
It helps, because sitting at the computer is really hard for me to do.
Me too. So Cheryl's asking what your new challenge what's your new challenge after gigantic woodcuts? What's next? Is there some sort of big challenge that you've set for yourself?
Do you remember those the posters of Paris ones? So then I found out, yes, I can do circus looking little prints. So now let's do reduction big prints on the press. So what I'm probably going to do is not do 8 feet tall ones, because they just don't sell. I mean, I got to be realistic. If I'm going to make this stuff, I got to be able to sell it. So, 4 to 6 feet max in terms of height, and skinny, because I just love those tall, skinny prints. I'm going to do them with the farm theme, farm animals, and do it again like the Chicago hog with the little windows, And there's all sorts of animals I've got. I have this amazing mole photos that I know it doesn't sound like a successful one. This will probably be one that doesn't sell, but
no, it's
really
intriguing.
Like, have you seen mole hands? They're freaky. Like, that shouldn't be allowed. Like, how does it? Yeah, they're freaky. But so, I'm going to need to weigh what's actually sellable and what do I just really want to talk about. But the wonderful thing about using the Art Nouveau style of posters with these big woodcuts is that you can tell a story in these little insets,
Totally. Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to doing those finally. I've been wanting to do them for years, and now that I know I can do the reduction big, and I know I can do that style, that's the
cool opportunities for typography too, and that lettering, like all of those graphics really will be fun.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think you have acquired many, many new fans, and we are just so grateful to you, and thank you for making the trip to Wausau and sharing your work with us. It was delightful, and it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to learning more tomorrow and over the weekend during your workshop. So we thank Sue for the presentation. And if you enjoyed this virtual program, we would love to hear from you. Please feel free to share feedback by emailing the museum at info@lywam.org or comment on our social media channels. And if you are feeling like you really had a great time and you want to share even more, you can actually make a donation to the Woodson Art Museum through our website, and we will share a link for that in the chat as well. Sue, any other final words?
Thank you. I'm reading all the really kind words. Thank you so much, you guys. That means a ton. I really appreciate it.
All right, yes, thank you. And yeah, hopefully looking forward to more with you soon. Thank you.